Welcome to the Lifestyle Property Podcast. I'm Jamie Greaves, your host and professional property investor. I'm here to bring you insights, home truths and powerful stories about what really goes on in property investment, business and growing your dream lifestyle. Are you ready? Let's get into it. Welcome back to the Lifestyle Property Podcast and welcome to episode 8, which is where I'll be answering the question why I started with Airbnb and holiday lets and SA. It's one of my most commonly asked questions. And I'm going to get straight into it. I'm going to pack this full of insights and valuable tips for you. And let's get straight into it. So why did I start with SA? Why did I start with holiday lets and Airbnb? Well, the number one reason was cash flow. Okay, and I say that proudly. It's good to be really open on reasons. The cash flow. I've touched on this already on previous podcasts, but this has to be our goal number one. Okay, so this has to be our initial focus. This buys back our time. This allows us to go full time into property, and really we want a high cash flow strategy because it's going to be far quicker and far easier to replace our salary that way. And that's exactly why I chose SA. So we want our bills to be paid and our lifestyle to be covered through our assets as quick as possible. And then we decide what to do next and what kind of lifestyle to lead. And really what we're doing here is buying our time back. So a really good cash flowing asset like an SA or HMO would pay, you might average out £1,000 per month, just for crude, simple numbers right now, £1,000 profit per month. So if you were doing buy-to-lets and getting 250 quid a month, then you're going to have to get 4 buy-to-lets or 200 quid 5 buy-to-lets to get 1 SA, 1 HMO. So why would you? So we want to start with the cash flow strategy. So that's the reason that and then there's reasons that I chose SA and holiday lets over HMO, which I'll perhaps cover. What this means is we don't need a huge amount of deals to get our income replaced. Okay, so if you can earn £1,000 a month from your per deal, okay, very realistic. Okay, how many do you need to replace your salary? 3, 4, 5? 5 grand a month is 60 grand a year. It's significantly more tax efficient than if you were in salary. I've not done the numbers, but I imagine 60 grand a year through business is the equivalent of 90 or 100 grand salary because just the world's broken and unfortunately employees pay by far the most tax and businesses don't need to. So honestly, I think 3 to 4 deals would replace the vast majority of people's salaries, and then you can go full time into property should you wish. I will cover that question in a later podcast because that's a biggie. You don't need to go full time in property. There's reasons to and reasons not to, which I'll cover. So just to give an insight into our world, in terms of cash flow, we own some luxury holiday lets that bring in more than £100,000 revenue per year. Okay, we've owned them for a number of years now, so we know they do. So even after you've paid the mortgage and cleaning and change errors and taxes, that leads a huge amount of profit. Okay, let's say from that 100 grand house, being really conservative, then you're netting 40 grand after mortgage and maintenance and everything. Okay, that's a lot of money. So that's a lot of money. Now, obviously not every house provides that, and you need to know where to invest and what to invest in and how to invest, and all that's a given. And it's not technically financial advice on this podcast. I don't want to get into any hot water, but I'm just giving you my honest insights and lessons and tips and tricks. It's huge, fantastic cash flow. For those who listened to the last podcast, hopefully all of you, I started with Invent to say, which is a great cash flow business. That's what it is. Money in, money out. It's pure cash flow business. Okay, and it's a great way of starting with minimal capital, so long as we do it correctly. Yeah. So strategies like flips or deal sourcing, as I mentioned on the last podcast, they're a little bit of feast or famine. You earn some income some months, then nothing for months. You can't live on that. You can't pay your bills on that. You can't support your family on that. You want to do that later. Okay, and then things like owning commercial assets and buy-to-lets, they can be good for capital growth, absolutely, but they're slow income. Okay, better doing that later. Do that later in your investment career. The best order to do things in is the following order. Cash flow first. Nail your cash flow. Okay, choose one cash flow strategy like SA and holiday lets, like what I have. Okay, nail that. Then later on, if you then want to build up a significant part to buy some slow assets, then you can do things like maybe you'll do some flips or some deal sourcing. Once you've got experience, once you know what you're doing, once you know a good and a bad deal, and you've got refurb teams and you've got a PAL team around you, you can then move into those, should we say, riskier strategies where it's feast or famine, and then you can pop it into, if you wanted to diversify it and create a really safe portfolio, you can pop it into things like commercial assets or stocks, shares, buy-to-lets in future years. But that's the order in which I've just explained there can save you years. Yes. So cash flow is why I started. Okay, number one reason. Okay, the number two reason that I loved SAs and chose to get into it is you get to combine capital growth with cash flow. Okay, so normally if you want cash flow and good cash flow, we have to go into the least desirable areas. So when I say normally, I'm talking about buy-to-lets predominantly, but even in a lot of HMO investing, we have to go into the worst areas to get better rates, so to get better yields, and therefore pay us more in terms of income. So to get cash flow, we have to go into the less desirable areas, parts of town, but they do not get good capital growth. Okay, they don't get good capital growth. So we don't really want to own a portfolio of lots of little, I do apologise if this is you, but it's just the truth of the matter. You don't want to own a portfolio of small, cheap houses. It's not smart because they're not going to go up in value comparatively compared to prime areas. Okay, if we look at prime areas, in-demand areas, I'm talking like detached houses and semi-detached houses, they go up significantly more in percentage-wise than, say, terrace houses in cheaper areas. So they'll provide you more headaches. So the beauty of SA and holiday lets is they work best in prime areas. Okay, contractors want to stay in the best parts of cities and towns. Brilliant. When you go on a holiday, you want to be in the best areas. So the assets grow significantly in value. So it really is a win-win. I'm amazed at the portfolio growth that we've had in recent years, and we've done nothing for it. You buy it, you refurb it, and then over time, just the values go up significantly. It's crazy. I could give you so many examples here. I just one sprung to mind because I was talking about this with a business partner just today. I own a property called Abbey Farmhouse, lovely luxury holiday let. It was the first big holiday let that we bought. We bought it for £340,000 to £340,000. It's actually semi-detached. As crazy as it is, it's you might even call it end terrace, but it's a very large, lovely property. Okay. Now it's been recently revalued by two different surveyors, and we've done this refinance now. There's no money left in. We've done it at £525,000. Okay, so get your head around those numbers. We bought it for £340,000. Okay, we bought it well. We bought it below market value. It might be worth, say, £380,000 to £390,000 when we bought it. So we bought it smart. Big reason for why we do property, remember, on a previous podcast. But that's worth £525,000. So the money that went in from a JV partner has all been pulled out. There's no money left in. It pays us a huge income, and we love it. We love it. So yeah, capital growth is significant within SA because you buy in the prime areas. And for those who are starting in rent to SA, cash flow is amazing. And then when you start to buy, you get the benefit of capital growth as well. That's exactly what I did. Okay, another thing that I've absolutely loved about SA is just how diversified it is. So I don't like risk. Okay, I'm not a risk taker. We need to take risks within property. We need to take smart, educated risks, but I like to mitigate and lower as many of these as possible. And what I've loved about it is I've been able to diversify my portfolio. Okay, so I own some contractor SAs in towns and cities. So if anything changed with those, for example, if in 2 years' time the government banned Airbnb and banned tourism, let's say, or banned people working away from home, they're never going to. Look, there's a huge market. We need to work away from home, and contractors a huge market. But let's say that happened, and I own loads of contractor lets. No problem. Okay, we'll flip them into a different. We'll just pivot them into a different strategy because they've been bought well, they've been bought smart, so that you've got lots of exits with those. So it's really safe. My luxury holiday lets, no problem if they ban it because I'll just go and live there. We could sell our, and just residentially, they'll be worth a fortune. So we'd exit and make significant sums. But that's never going to happen. But it's nice to know that you're just nice and diversified. And I've been able to do that. So highly focused. yet built a highly diversified portfolio. And I love that about SA. I love it. I could go on all day about this, but I want a packet full of tips and lessons and insights for you. Because this is where the real value is for you. So far, we've covered 3 reasons why I've grown my Airbnb and SA holiday let portfolio, why I've chose this as my strategy. Okay, cash flow, capital growth, and diversification. They're huge reasons. Okay, but there's something else that I've come to love as well, which has happened very. This wasn't intentional. I love how balanced SAs and holiday lets is in terms of the split between men and women. There are, and I say this as a white man, there's too many white men in property investment. I don't know why. I don't know. I've not looked into it, but there's just too many of us. When you look at panels and events, it's full of white guys, full of like middle-aged white men. I don't know why, and it's crazy. And it shouldn't be this way. It should be accessible to all, any sex, any religion, any age, anything whatsoever. And that's a world that hopefully we're moving towards. And what I love about holiday lets and SAs, it attracts a lot of female investors, which is bloody brilliant. And they're some of the very best investors that I know. It's really wonderful. So I've got access to a lot of people these days. I mentor people, and a lot of the people who come through our major programs that we help and support and get great results, they're women, and it's lovely to see. And what I've seen is they can just make better investors because they've got. Often women have got an amazing eye for detail. So when it comes to interior design and just seeing things that we dumb cavemen will just miss, they're great for it, and they really take passion in terms of creating beautiful places for people to come together and enjoy and make memories. So for whatever reason, I found that there's more women involved within holiday lets and SA than what there are in other asset classes, and I love that. If only all asset classes was the same, and hopefully they will be in the future. So yeah, I think it's really, really healthy and something that's nice. And I wouldn't want to have a mentorship group with 12 men because it's not balanced. That's not the society we live in. We want complementary minds, and yeah, it's really nice. So I'm going to keep going into these because I think they'll be really valuable in terms of so you can decide what strategy you want to focus on yourself. So another big one is I really love the idea of how that they're kept in show home condition. It's a biggie. So before I got involved in SA and holiday lets and focused, I was flirting with the other strategies. So I've got experience of buy to let and flips and lease options and delayed completions and all that world. And that was when it was a bit messy for me and foggy, and it wasn't going well because I was trying too many strategies. But something that I kept seeing both within my assets but also other people's is tenants don't always look after houses and flats. Let's be honest. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But the thing I loved about SA is you're sending in weekly or fortnightly cleaners. So even in our contractor lets, and in many of our contractor lets, we've had people staying there for months. In one of them, the same company's been in there for 18 months. 18 months. But we still send in fortnightly cleaners. They've not asked for it, but we do, just so there are eyes and ears. And it just makes sure that they're kept in great condition. So that's a win-win-win-win-win. When we're getting high cash flow, and then there's strong capital growth, and it's highly diversified and it's balanced, they're being kept in great condition. It's a very nice place to be. In terms of the fifth reason, there was something that was nagging away at me before I started within SA and holiday lets. In terms of, I didn't want to be part of the problem. In certain parts of this country, second homes are not liked by local communities, by councils, for good reason. And now I've learned that that's not SA, that's not holiday let. So if I look at some of my investment areas, let's just take North Wales as an example. North Wales don't like empty homes. So if you have an empty home, you pay double the council tax for right reason, because there's communities here where people like to buy like second homers like to buy properties in North Wales because it's a beautiful part of the world. But unfortunately, lots of these second homers, they only go and use their house 2 or 3 weeks a year. And that's not only bad for the people that want to buy there and live there and create their own families, their own lives there, but it's bad for the local infrastructure. It's the local shops and restaurants and bars and pubs and amenities because they're not being used. But what I've learned is councils and communities love holiday lets. Okay, there are parts of the country where this doesn't apply. That there's when the Article 4 restriction comes in to regulate SA and holiday lets more, which will maybe be later on 2024, 2025, we'll see. There'll be certain Article 4 areas put up to restrict those where there's too many. That's a good thing. We need that. That's a really good thing. But yeah, it's what I found in the areas where it is where councils are appreciative, they do a lot of good. So my holiday lets that I own, I can tell you, are very, very popular with the neighbours and the residents and the local communities. And it makes sense. It makes sense because people are coming for their family holidays and they're spending money. They're spending money. Or even if it's contractors, I found contractors, because they've worked together all day, they like to get out and about. So they'll go to the pubs and the shops and the restaurants and the gyms, everything locally. So these properties that we own, they're fueling the local economy. They're really popular. And then if you want to go down the rabbit hole even, well, we found lots of little ethical win-wins. So we'll contact the very best restaurants and bars, and even things like hairdressers, the salons and so forth, for what's most highly rated, what are the best places. We'll then explain to them that we've got a holiday let. Can we give our guests a discount? Yes, of course. Our guests get a discount in those places. They get business. They have a great time. Everyone wins. So we're doing good. We're doing good for the local community, and I love that. Okay, it's great. And then finally, there's no tenants. There's no tenants, and again, I must say I love that part of it. So if you're uneducated in this space and just dive into any strategy, and I will cover this, I'm sure later on. Then things can go wrong in any of these strategies. Okay, because if you don't know what you're doing, then nothing works. We need to have knowledge. That's a given. But I love how there's no tenants, because there's just in terms of the contracts, a guest doesn't have any tenancy rights into their house. Okay, so if the guest does anything where we want to vacate them, they're vacated, deposits paid, sorted. But tenants, on the other hand, and I'm sure if anyone has owned a buy-to-let for more than 5 years, they've unfortunately first-hand or second-hand, they'll have a bad experience of this, where tenants can go through rough times. Unfortunately, often it's not even their fault. It's just the world we live in. They can lose their job or have mental health issues or you name it. And unfortunately, they might be in a position where they can't pay, or they then trash the house. And even my brother, bless him, my brother, when he went through his mental health episode, he trashed his flat. Now we got that sorted because I'm respectful for the landlord. He was living in rented place there, but this happens. It really, really happens. So I do love that about SA and holiday lets, in terms of there's no tenants. So you've just got a lot more control. So if you want someone out of your property, then you can. So this really comes down to control. The beautiful thing I found within SA and holiday lets and Airbnb is that there's a lot more control and a lot more flexibility for everyone involved, really. So let's say if we're buying properties and then running them as an SA, you've got full control of the asset. So if you want anyone to leave your property, you can. They've got no rights. You've got full access and control of that. Now, unfortunately, what's happening in the UK right now is the court system's getting worse and worse and worse. And there's, with the new tenant rights coming into effect in 2025 and beyond, it's going to get harder and harder for buy-to-let landlords to operate, because tenants can simply stay put, and it's so hard to evict. So that's one thing I've really loved about SA. So if you're buying, you get the control. And therefore flexibility. And on the other hand, if you're doing rent to SA, well, it's a big reason why landlords will opt to work with you, because it's a far more flexible contract. If you break the terms of that contract, i.e. damage the house or don't pay rent, then the contract can be null and void, fair enough. But that's not the case, unfortunately, within tenant law right now. So it just needs change, really. Now, I say all this from a good heart. I've got a good heart to do good in life, but I think it's really powerful, like I touched upon into the previous podcast, to be a capitalist socialist. So let's grow our corporate champagne business, and then from that position of affluence and wealth, be able to then go and make a real impact and really change people's lives. And if you want to set up and fund charities, then you can, and it's a great place to be. And I mentioned Taylor Swift and Marcus Rashford as examples, but that's the kind of mindset that I think is really, really powerful. So yeah, it's a big reason that I've come to love SA. So it's that control and flexibility that if you own the asset, you have, and if you're doing rental, say that you can offer the landlord to give them a really ethical collaboration. Okay, so we've covered a lot of reasons, a lot of reasons. Now maybe I'll cover HMOs with a guest or two, because I want to give you a balanced view and an honest deep dive view. So in fact, I will do that. I will bring people onto the podcast who do HMOs, but they were essentially just never for me. And yeah, I could go into it, I don't like risk. So the commercial valuations involved in HMOs are not for me. I think it's like building a castle on quicksand, honestly. And there's a few of the aspects that they weren't for me personally. But I'm not saying they're not for you, but they just weren't for me. And I will bring people on there for a more balanced view. So you guys get true insights and true experience, not just for myself, but other really good people as well. And then I'm going to come on to my last one, my favourite reason. And as soon as I learned you could do this, I was like, yep, that's a bit of me. I'm in. Okay, because I knew about the cash flow and the capital growth. I knew you could buy in prime areas. I knew that it paid higher cash flow than any of the strategy and stuff like that. But it was when I learned this one thing from who's now a business partner, a close friend of mine. When he told me this, I was like, yep, I'm in. Any guesses? Any idea what I'm talking about? That was my poor drum roll. It's the fact that I get to treat my family and friends in my properties. I absolutely love it. So my business partner, Phil Saunders, who I'll pull onto the podcast, I'm sure, he was doing this. So he had one property when I met him, and he was staying that week, midweek. It was out of season with his family, and there's nothing better. So when you've gone out and bought something and refurbed it, and then you can take your family there, and your family or your friends can have holidays there, you're filled with pride, and it becomes part of your lifestyle. It's beautiful. So it's not only I who do this. We make sure that my business partners and our joint venture partners, you go and stay in our places, because they're not meant to be full all the time. If you're full all the time, you're too cheap. Okay, so we want to be operating at about 70%. Perfect. Okay, and then in those other times, in those other seasons, especially with the flexibility I've got within property to go whenever, means you get to enjoy them and book them. And what we're doing in our portfolio, and this is going a little bit advanced now, but let's see if we want to go down the rabbit hole. We're reducing our leverage. Okay, so we're reducing our gearing, i.e., we want to owe as little to the bank as possible, and that is increasing our cash flow. Brilliant, because then we're earning more, but also it's then allowing us to, hey mate, you have Christmas week in that house, I'm going to have summer week in that house, and they become lifestyle properties. Okay, you get that? Lifestyle property. Okay, and this is the very name of the podcast, and one of my businesses is called Lifestyle Breaks, because as you reduce your gearing and you reduce your bank debt, and that's a whole other story for a different day, then you can get to enjoy them more and more and more, even in peak seasons and peak times, and that's a great place to be. Okay, so holiday lets and Airbnb and SA and all the names for them, they've been life-changing for me. Okay, they've given me not just financial freedom, but time and lifestyle freedom. And I'll always and forever be grateful for that. Okay. Then once you've got that, once you've got a consistent amount of money rolling in, and you've systemized it, and it's passive, and it's all good, you then decide your time. You can then decide your focus. My focus is family and charity. That's me. I've explained that on previous podcasts. Okay, and I'll throw in there nature and food and travel and adventures and holidays as well. They're the things I love, but a big focus is on just quality time and helping family, because I've got the time to do that, and then investing in growing and helping charities as well. So every strategy works. They all work, but start with cash flow. Okay, and slow assets, do that later. Slow assets come later. They really do. Okay. So next week, I hope that's been useful, guys. I always get feedback after the fact, so you just got to have faith that I'm having faith that I'm just trying to give you as much value as possible. I want to help as many people as possible. Okay, and this is why I've chosen podcasts, because I'm here just to help. So I'm hoping it's working and hoping you're finding it really, really valuable. Because I'm sure I'm being as authentic and insightful and honest and caring as humanly possible here. So next week, I'm going to go into, I've already covered various mistakes people make, but next week, episode number 9, I'm going to cover a big mistake people make in property. And the title for that one is Goldilocks. Okay, so I'll see you next week for Goldilocks, and take care. Bye-bye. Thank you for listening to the Lifestyle Property Podcast. If you've enjoyed this episode, I'd love it if you could leave us a review so we can reach and help more people. I'll also be giving one person who leaves a review a free family holiday to one of our luxury holiday lets. Thank you, and see you next time.